a lot of children who even at grade 2 or grade 3 level are unable to read even at grade 1 level.
I did have a mother, a very concerned parent, who had once met me and said that her family are all readers, starting from her great-grandfather, grandfather, father, her. We've read thousands of books, Miss Rajashree, but my daughter doesn't read. We have bookshelves filled with books. We have rooms filled with books, but she never goes and she's always on the phone. And so I listened to her for some time and then I just asked her one question: has your daughter ever seen you read? In the world of AI, words are the code. So it's like coding. You need to put in the right words. And how do they get the right words? How do they know what to put in there? And how do they know how to ask AI for what? With reading, you learn the vocabulary, you learn the language that you need, also for using AI properly. Don't insist on newspapers. It's not always pleasant what you read there. There are a lot of creative ways that schools gauge how much a student is reading or how much a student has understood from reading something that they have read.
We can't go through all the experiences that are there in the world, and so we have books. Books kind of reflect life.
There's something that we do which is called book tasting. So we make a menu and we keep it on the table and there are different books. And so you do this tasting where you have these books, you read a little bit of it, and then you move on to the next book. Not everybody reads for 20 minutes at a stretch. So start with 5 minutes, it's okay. But that's your personal goal. What is the next one?
I think what parents confuse is reading with study. Hello all, welcome to Yellow Slate podcast. In today's session, we will talk about something that's very important to all of us, the growing concern that is around love for reading for children and how it's fading away. To have this subject discussed, we have with us today Miss Rajashree, who is an experienced language and literature educator at TRIO, and she will help us understand what this problem is all about, why reading is important, and how it can help our children in future. Let me begin with a small statistic that I dug up a couple of days ago, that there is a sharp decline in reading habit among 8 to 18 years age group of children. What do you have to say about that? Do you think the decline is palpable? Do you see it around you in your school? Or what's your take on it? And why do you think it might be happening?
Yes, Sandhya, the statistic is concerning. And as you said, there is a little bit of decline. But I would say that as schools, we are trying to fill that gap. Now, when we look back, the world has gone through a little bit. There was a global pandemic, or which has impacted the habits and the attention span. And there's massive curriculum changes. There is the digital world that has come in, and that's where our children are living. It's very important that we don't try to pull them back into our world. We don't live in our past. Yes, like you said, we grew up reading. I know that I have spent hours reading in my room, but that's not the world today. So it's very important to understand our children, understand their needs, and then we meet midway. That's what we try as schools. We strive to meet them midway, and we try to create spaces for them to enjoy reading, not as a task, not because they have to, but because we want them to experience reading as something that is meaningful, that can be reflective, and something that they can enjoy alongside the digital world. So it's about creating that bridge where we meet children and us. And I really like that when you began, you said parents, school, communities. As a child at the center, it's very important that all three, the trio, work together to make sure that we help our children out the best way possible. And reading definitely is something that we do daily, but it is given to them not as an assignment or a task or not for assessment, but as a part of their lives, as something that they are doing, sometimes not realizing that they're doing.
I think you brought up an important point here, which is attention span. We know for sure that children have far shorter attention capabilities than probably we had earlier. How do we address this? How do we build or design a reading program which will enable the child to spend time with any kind of print reading? Children today introduced to short versions of everything. If they want to read a story or if they want to listen to a story, they would rather listen to it on YouTube or find information on YouTube or some other digital mode. What can we actually do to, one, build this attention span build it up to spending longer time or engaging more with print reading? And what kind of structures or programs do you think schools can design to ensure that's possible or that is developed?
You're right, actually. Again, coming back to the digital world, everything is just like that. It's available for them, and it's all bite-sized. It's all reels, and it's all visually stimulating for them. So why would they come back to a book and sit and read when they have everything out there? So what we do at schools is that before I start, say, a novel study or maybe a poem, I show them a short video related to the text. So we start with something that they like doing, and that sort of gets them to discuss, gets them to talk, gets their interest. And then we move on to something longer, which is probably reading a short paragraph or maybe a summary or a short article. And then we go to the next step. So it has to be done consciously. It has to be done as something that includes what they love as well, which is the digital media there. So when you do that, then children are automatically interested. They like to. So what I try to do, and what in many schools that I have seen, is that they do what we call the reading sprints. So it's not as if you're just sitting there and you give a book and start reading, finish the book. That's not what it is, and that's never what it should be. It should be something like, okay, let's read the first page or the first chapter, and then let's discuss. And sometimes when there is an activity or where there is a purpose to reading, then students are even more interested. For example, you have a debate. So you give them something to read and tell them that, okay, the next hour you're going to have a debate. That gets them reading because there's something that they love to do after this. So then we see that they're interested, they're close reading, they're discussing, they're finding out points, they're annotating. So those are those simple ways that we do, that we have probably adopted to make sure that children are given the opportunity, the spaces, the experiences to look at reading as not an exercise or a task, something that is tedious, but something that they enjoy doing and that has purpose, that's meaningful.
Here's the big debate today is AI. How AI is taking over most of our tasks and the looming future where machines will be doing most of the work and there is uncertainty about what humans will be doing. Now, when it comes to children doing assignments, the critical thing here is AI works best when you know what
command to give.
What prompts to give them. How do you think reading and good reading helps children in using AI to their advantage to learn and to grow rather than to cut and paste a response given by a machine?
So yes, the age of AI, it is here. And like you said, it's there and children will use it. It's important for them to be told, or it's important for them to understand that in the world of AI, words are the code. So it's like coding. You need to put in the right words. And how do they get the right words? How do they know what to put in there? And how do they know how to ask AI for what? So reading is, I think, the backbone there. You can't take it away completely. It's important because with reading, you learn the vocabulary, you learn the language that you need also for using AI properly to your advantage. So that's very important. It's about educating children. It's also about educating ourselves that AI is there. It is important.
The habits that develop at home is also considered very important for children to actually make it a lifelong habit. The same applies to reading. What do you think parents can do to help children become better readers that will help them in the later years?
It's a very important question, and I'm glad you asked that because we all know that the first teachers of a child is, of course, the parents. Yes, because the first 5 years are very important. And after that comes the school and then the community. So yes, parents have a big role to play. But what I tell parents when they come to meet me during PTMs, and maybe I probably will share an example here. I did have a mother, a very concerned parent who had once met me and said that her family, she said, are all readers. Starting from her great-grandfather, grandfather, father, her. We've read thousands of books, Miss Rajashree, but my daughter doesn't read. We have bookshelves filled with books. We have rooms filled with books, but she never goes and she's always on the phone. And so I listened to her for some time and then I just asked her one question. Has your daughter ever seen you read? So that is very important because you have to model to children what you expect them to do. They imitate. So rather than telling them, show them. Maybe parents can have like a family reading time. Again, coming back to don't make it a task. Don't ask your children, did you read this? And after that, did you write a summary? Because there are parents who expect that when you read a book and you write a summary of the book, that's how you learn the language. Or that's how you get better at reading skills. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way because we're dealing with children here. So what needs to be done is probably have a family reading time or a time where you are discussing something about the book, not about finishing the book. Have you finished the book? No, but tell me something that's in that book that's very interesting. That gets the child thinking. Okay, what is it that, there is this particular character or this particular scene that the writer has written, and I found it extremely, extremely emotional, mommy or daddy. That brings the whole reading thing into the family. And what about our grandparents? We grew up with our grandparents telling us stories.
True.
Yes, folk tales and about them, and probably about Akbar and Birbal, Panchatantra. Yeah. Have those kind of sessions at home. Let's not call it session, time at home, where you're spending with your family, where reading becomes again not something that they have to do, but they get to do, and something that they enjoy. So that way parents can help a lot. Don't become teachers there, not to become a teacher and say, okay, read this, and don't make it as something that you give a reward at the end. Not that. I would say that make it as an experience that you enjoy as a family, like a family time where you are discussing. That makes a lot of difference. That's where it all comes from. You come from a family that enjoys books, that enjoys reading, and that transfers or transitions into your school life where you are talking about books in class. So everything here is connected. And then it comes to the community where we have libraries where students or children can go and read, where there are community reading time. You can have reading with senior citizens. They have a lot to share. So it's all linked. There has to be a balance. Everything in the universe is a balance, isn't it? It's when that balance is affected, things go awry. So it's very important that schools, parents, and community, we work together for a common cause, and that is the best for the child.
Since a large percentage of people who watch this show are parents, what would you say are the 3 most important things that they should do with their children to ensure that they develop the habit of reading?
The first one is always, like I said, show.
Model reading.
Yes, don't tell. Sometimes let children choose what they want to read as well, even if it's just a comic. Sometimes I want to read it, and it's okay. So don't put a lot of restrictions there. I know parents who insist on their children reading the newspaper. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I know as a parent, I know where they're coming from. Yeah. They are worried. They are concerned. And they also know that newspapers, the language that is used. But what I tell parents who come to meet me is that don't insist on newspapers. It's not always pleasant what you read there. If you see an article that is really good, that is something about maybe well-being, wellness, sports, and you think your child would be interested in it, then you read it to them or ask them to read, but don't insist on reading the entire thing. So
I mean, that makes sense.
Make it something that you love to do.
Yeah.
You love books. Yeah. And
I think this is
pass that on.
Very sharp. Yeah. Show, read yourself.
Yes.
That's one. Make it a happy experience.
Make it a happy
and 3, allow them to read what they like reading.
Yeah.
I think, they make a lot of sense.
Yes. Allow them to read, but appropriate stuff, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
How do schools work on this aspect of reading, where emotions are also built around through reading habit? How do schools address this area through learning of language and literature?
Very good question. Reading fiction, for example, is not just about understanding the plot and understanding what the writer has used and analyzing it. It is also about putting yourself in the character's shoes sometimes. I know that in our school, in the PYP, they read this book called The Boy in Striped Pajamas. And you know how emotional that book is. Yeah. So those kind of books, when you're reading, you're not reading it with the purpose of understanding the plot and then, okay, we're done with the book and then we move on to the next book. We're reading it because we want the children to feel what the character feels. That way, we are bringing in that culture of what we call social emotional learning.
Yeah.
where you are reading and you are trying to understand what somebody feels in a situation like that. What if you are in that situation? What would you do?
The humanness of it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So that way books help a lot, fiction especially, because there's so much. It's not just about sad things. It's also about happy things. A book as simple as The Lion King. It's so beautiful to read. We saw the movie. It was so brilliant. So there are a lot of books there. Wonder, what a beautiful book. It's not just about reading. It's about understanding that there are children who go through those struggles. And how do we help? If we are in their place, what would we do? What would we do differently? What can we do? How can the world treat them, help them? That kind of empathy is created. I think we help children learn that empathy through books, through the reading.
If you were given free hand to design language curriculum, how would you embed this whole art of reading, and what kind of program would you design?
It's almost like if I have the power.
Yes.
If I had the power, like you're saying, I would just say I would probably try to give more support to schools in ensuring that they have the time, they have more space to bring in reading, more experiences in reading, more meaningful reading, so that, everybody can enjoy reading, not as a task, but as something that, like I said in the beginning, something that they get to do with their students, not have to do because there are marks attached to it or because there's an assessment. That's what I would do.
Yeah. In many schools, libraries are just room full of books. What do you think libraries can do to develop reading habits, not only among children, but also among teachers? Because a good reader always encourages good reading. And that is very true of teachers. Like you said, parents need to model reading. So do teachers. To convert libraries into vibrant reading zones, spaces, what can schools do to ensure that?
Yeah, it is important to definitely have a library, and all schools, I think most of the schools have
them.
Libraries have to be, like you said, a space where children feel like going and sitting and relaxing and reading. And it has to be inviting. So you create these small nooks and corners, which are nice and cozy for them to pick up a book, sit and read. Maybe have soft music in the background. That's something that I would love to suggest in my school as well. And some activities. So if the school librarian and the teachers together come up with activities where, it encourages children to sort of pick up a book and read, or, read more than what they have read in the previous year, that would be good. Now, some activities would be like, our librarian once made a tree. She put a tree up, and then she had these leaves where she wanted children to write about their favorite character and, decorate the tree with things about your favorite characters. It was leaves. It was anything that could be found.
True.
So that is something that was a big hit instantly. And she had this part of the wall where she put up teachers' photos and what they are reading. So this is what your teacher is reading this month. So we had our photos up there, and what did we read? What are we reading? What we intend to read? So there are children who stand there and they're, my teacher's reading this now. So these kind of things that show that reading is not just restricted to children. It's not something that only they have to do, but it's something that is being done, and it's being done by my teacher, my parents. That encourages them, and library becomes a space that encourages these things. It's very important that way. And come up with, it's not easy, I would say. It's not easy for teachers. It's not easy for librarians, because you have to come up with creative ways. But I also feel that these are one of the most creative people out there, teachers and librarians, because they have to constantly think of innovative methods to bring reading into the life of children. So, hats off to them. I wanted to actually add another point where it's not just like a quiet space. It is also a space where you can create things. Yes, library, we have to be quiet, but it's not just that. You can create things like book trailers. That's something that we do in our school. And that is something that children do at home as well. So it's an activity that we give that, pick up a book that you have in your home library. You're reading that. Make a book trailer of it, and then present it. So these activities, when they are connected to reading, it makes reading automatically more interesting, something that's purposeful. Coming back to having a purpose.
Yeah, I think you brought up an important skill again. Now, that brings me to the connection between literacy and reading. In my experience, I have seen a lot of children who, even at grade 2 or grade 3 level, are unable to read even at grade 1 level. Do you think there is this inability to decode word lead to reading inaptitude? Are they linked? And how do schools bridge this gap between children being able to read, actually literate, develop literacy skills, and then connect it to reading? Are they connected, or is this something that can be developed as a whole language teaching?
I think it's very important to understand that there is nothing called one size fits all when it comes to children. So there are children who can read books in 2 hours. I have students who have read books in 2 hours and come back and say, Miss, we have read this. There are students who take time. And like you said, there are students who probably find it difficult to decode words. So that's where differentiation comes in. That's where we have to make plans that suit each child or each group. So what we do in classes is that we have peer tutoring, peer learning, buddy system, where children help children. So we're also building a community there where we're teaching them that, okay, there may be people who are not able to do it the way you do. Help them, get them at par with you. And it also helps them to learn better. I keep telling you, want to learn something better, teach.
Like it is said, that we can't go through all the experiences that are there in the world. And so we have books.
Yes.
Books kind of reflect life.
Yes.
And all the emotions that the characters go through are emotions that children, young people, whoever is reading a book may have felt or may feel, at some point. So I think that's really a very good idea, getting children to read books that are poignant. So that again brings me to the quality of books that children should be reading. How do we direct our children or guide our children to choose books that reflect life? I'm not saying that children should not read funny books or books that are very light. How do you think choices of books, how do teachers in schools and parents, how can they help children make choices that will actually build their capacity, build their imagination, build their ability to navigate the theme or the ideas that are embedded in a story or a fiction or a journal article or whatever it is that they choose to read at that point of time?
Yeah, so children have their own, likes and dislikes when it comes to books.
Sure.
And today there are many books that are available. Again, I think it's important that we respect what they like. We can't say that, oh, that's not a good book or don't read comics. But it's all about, again, the balance. You read what you enjoy, and then let me introduce you to something that is probably even better. Ask them to taste. So there's something that we do, which is called book tasting. So we make a menu and we keep it on the table, and there are different books, and those books are available. And this is something that our librarian does, and she's very good at coming up with these innovative ideas to get children to be interested in books. So you do this tasting where you have these books, you read a little bit of it, and then you move on to the next book. So we're giving them an idea of the different genres that are out there. And somewhere it clicks, and they realize that, okay, I love reading something like this. A lot of children today love to read mystery books, sometimes try to sort of steer them to some of our classics. The Count of Monte Cristo, it's one of the best books written. Yes.
Also very big.
It is very big. It is. But, they have these abridged versions also. Yeah. So it's all about how you do it. It's not exactly what. It's, again, these are children, and we need to be very careful, very empathetic in the way we handle these things. They have their likes, let them do it, and then slowly bring them to what you think they should be reading. Give them little by little, not a whole book. Yeah. Not 5 books in a month, but little, so that they start enjoying it and they start realizing that, okay, this is meaningful. And it's also good if you give students their own goals. Coming back to that attention span thing we said, we start with 5 minutes. Not everybody reads for 20 minutes at a stretch. So start with 5 minutes, it's okay. But that's your personal goal. What is the next one? So 10 minutes is next. So slowly building around and introducing them to books that you liked reading. We have sessions in classrooms where we talk about what I liked reading as a child and why. Little Women is one of the books that I talk about. When I tell them why I liked reading that book and the March sisters and, what they go through, and students find it interesting. And there are students who've gone and picked up the book or bought the book, and they've come back and said, Miss Rajashree, I've got the book and I've started reading, and you're right, it is so interesting. So it's the way it is presented to them that matters. And I think schools are doing it. I know that. I know there are schools doing it. It's just, I think we need to give them a little more time. It's about evolving together as a school, as students, especially when it comes to reading.
Right.
So yeah, that's one way, let them read what they like to read, but bring them slowly into
Introduce them
more
to
books,
other genres.
genres,
Yeah.
literature, longer reading. But it has to be done in steps,
Yeah.
step by step.
Yeah. So one of the things that's important today is, how does the reading help not only in building imagination and having a good personality, but how does it help in careers? Or do you think there is a relationship, or do you think there is not?
There definitely is a relationship. When you read, you tend to learn a lot. Like you said, vocabulary.
Yeah.
Very important. You tend to learn how to express yourself. That is very important in every single career. It's not just about a teacher. It's anything you do. Be a doctor. You need to be able to speak to your patients, and you need to be able to convey things to them in ways that only the doctors know. You know what I'm trying to say, right? You
Yes.
can't just be saying harsh things. There's a way you sometimes have to work around with patients. Communication is extremely important. How you communicate and the words you use to communicate, it all comes back to reading. And definitely reading helps with it. I think every career needs people to read.
Some amount of reading
Yes,
to
definitely.
Yeah. That reminds me actually to one more. How do schools evaluate reading milestones? How do schools measure proficiency in reading among children?
It's not just about assessments.
It may not be, but most schools evaluate everything in writing. What do schools do to test or evaluate proficiency in reading? Do they do it, or should it be done, and how should it be done, if at all?
Interesting question, because like you said, it's not just about assessments. There are a lot of creative ways that schools gauge how much a student is reading or how much a student has understood from reading something that they have read. So it could be something as simple as, a role play. After reading a particular number of chapters, a role play on those chapters, or like I said, a debate. Or there are students who wrote a song on a book that they read. So there are different creative ways of ensuring that the children are reading and also assessing how much they have read. Have they understood what they have read? And there's also a time where you can give them to spend reflecting on reading, like write a journal about the book that really made an impact on you, or a book that you would love to go back to, a book that you would like to change the ending of. Give them prompts that will have them thinking. And then they come up with creative ways of their own sometimes. They come up with movies sometimes that can be used.
Because, we see language Olympiads, math Olympiads. Should there be something like a reading Olympiad? Especially in India, I'm not talking about urban schools, but mainstream. Reading is perceived as a challenge by children themselves. They think it is difficult. Also, the assessment is largely pen and paper assessments. Mm-hmm. And we always test memory. But reading and reading comprehension, how much have I understood? This is still, I guess, it's evolving to some extent. That's why the question came up, like, how do you test the proficiency? And the things that you said about asking children to write journals and, also using some standard assessments around reading might be. Do you think that's a way forward, to have something standardized about reading for children in India?
There are what we call formative assessments and summative assessments. So the pen and paper test that we're talking about comes in the summative ones, where, at the end of the term, we have a test which has the reading comprehension, and which just doesn't go with what they have memorized. There's nothing called memorizing there. That's how the curriculum is.
Yeah.
It's all about analyzing and how you read between lines and get implicit information. So it's all about critical thinking.
Right.
But at the same time, we have formative assessments where, throughout we do these little
You're
activities.
gauging their understanding.
And where they need help, that's also there. Where can I support, or where can we as a school support students so that they can do better than what they have been doing in terms of reading or understanding or even getting that interest in reading, because there will be students who are not so interested in reading. So how can we get them? So all these, it's like I said, it's a constant work, and it's a constant work in progress, and it's something that teachers, students, parents, everybody enjoy doing and should enjoy doing, because that's the way to help children the most when it comes to something like reading.
Yeah. Since we've spoken so much about reading, Rajashree, can we put out a small list for parents that they can encourage their children to, if the children are not reading, what book do you think we should help them start on?
There are so many books. So when you ask me like that, it's a bit difficult to just come up with a book just like that. I'm sure you also have a list that you can.
Long list.
Yeah. So, I love classics. I love my Oliver Twist and
absolutely.
I love my Little Women. I would always encourage them to read some of the classics.
Yeah.
Charles Dickens.
Mark Twain. Charles, they're timeless.
Yes.
I mean, they're relevant at any point of time. And you talked about a very good book that is
A Boy in Striped
Pajamas. There is a nice bit of history connected to it.
Definitely.
And what's the fallout of a conflict between nations is so beautifully brought out in such a humane and childlike manner. I think children should definitely read that.
That also brings me to, how you can use reading in different subjects as well. Yeah. Reading is not just restricted to English
language and literature.
Yeah, you can use it in history, for example, and then you read historical fiction as part of it. Or you can use it in science, where you read about the current discoveries and things. So it is not restricted.
Yeah.
And the child knows this, that reading is not just in English classes, but it's like a collaboration. Between all the subjects and English classes, and reading can be in every single subject, and it's fun.
13-year-olds or 11, 12, 13-year-olds can read Yuval Noah Harari's Sapiens because that's history narrated in the most delightful manner.
Yeah.
I think that's also a good book to start with. Young children, I think Dr. Seuss books are absolutely
all the places we go.
Yeah, all the places we go, or Who Hears the Who.
Yeah.
Horton Hears the Who.
Yes. Something that is written in such a way and is also visually very, very stimulating. Very attractive.
And also I think Horton Hears a Who is about how to pay attention to the tiniest of, because they speak to you, and it is such a delightful story about care, compassion, and I think it's quite amazing. Wonder that you mentioned.
Beautiful book.
Very nice book.
Yeah.
I think older children might enjoy Life of Pi.
Life of Pi, yes. Now that reminds me, we had the Pi Day once in, Math Week. They celebrated Pi Day. And then I recommended that, okay, let's read some extracts from Life of Pi. It was like a collaboration between math and English.
Right.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Books.
I mean, there are so many age groups and so many books to read. So there's one I particularly recommend to teachers, and children can also read them. It's called Toto-chan.
Oh, I remember.
That's a book I recommend to every single teacher. And of course, children can also read it if they want to know what kind of schools can exist, for children. Very delightfully written, and
I remember you recommended this when
that's the first book I recommend.
Yeah, I was in your training, and the first thing I did was go home and order the book. It was like,
that's great. Absolutely one of the finest books, that I have known.
For the older children, I would recommend Wuthering Heights.
Nice.
I love that book.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I mean, Heathcliff is
even Thomas Hardy's books.
Yes.
Far from the Madding Crowd. So many movies have, actually taken these stories and, they've been developed into movies. So I think they're great reading, great for language, great for vocabulary. I'm trying to think more for younger children.
Yeah, younger children. The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah,
there are simple.
The abridged versions.
Alice in Wonderland is a timeless classic again.
I think we can go on and on.
Yeah, all day, all day. One of the things, Rajashree, you mentioned that parents come to you with a lot of concern about their children not reading and not getting marks. What do you think?
Yeah, they do come. It's very important that there is a distinction between reading but for pleasure and reading for marks. We can't associate reading with just marks.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't work that way. Reading is something that you need. It's a habit. You inculcate it, and eventually it shows results. It can't be an overnight thing. It's like exercise. You can't just start yoga today and expect results in a week's time. It doesn't happen that way. So please do not attach reading with marks. I would say let it become something that's a part of your child's life, and you will see the results. It may be a little delayed, but you will definitely see it. But don't put it against the wall saying this is how it is. It has to get marks.
Yeah. I think what parents confuse is reading with studying. Like you said, reading for pleasure is a lifelong thing. You read because you enjoy it. It gives something to you. You get something out of it.
Yeah.
Whereas reading for marks is a completely different ball game altogether. So I think that's the confusion sometimes parents make, because I remember I was a voracious reader as a child, but I nearly failed all my tests. Do you recommend poetry? See, we talked a lot about reading fiction and journal, but I think fantastic vocabulary, empathy, and deeper meaning, of life always is communicated through poetry.
Yes.
So what poetry would you recommend children should read?
Oh,
and how should parents work around that one? Because poetry is about interpreting, and then how do we navigate that bit of literature?
Yeah, sometimes you don't need a whole book. You just need 4 lines to convey what a whole book probably would.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's important. And in our curriculum, again, we have brilliant poems that are there, which help student to empathize with a situation, with a person, like The Chimney Sweeper. Have you read by Blake? With Blake? Oh my God, what a beautiful poem. And it's all about child. So when we had that session in class, that made children think as to, okay, there are children who live like this in this world. So we are privileged.
Yeah.
We need to be grateful for what we have. And what is it that we can do to help so that this doesn't happen? So yes, there's some very beautiful poetry out there that I think both parents and children should, parents especially, should pick up,
read and talk about it, like
it's
The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost.
Miles Ago Before I Sleep.
Yes, absolutely. God. I mean, they're so meaningful, and I think the enjoyment of poetry is an acquired habit.
It is, yes.
But teachers can play a strong role, especially because mostly parents don't recommend poetry unless they themselves are, very deep into literature. So what poems would you recommend, parents should read to the children? Let's say if you could give us, a little bit for each age group, 1 or 2 for different age groups.
Going to be a long list, and I'll have to think. I'll have to think. But the William Blake one, definitely, I would want, because that's something that we are studying also. So there's always a connect between home and school.
Yeah. I think there is this poem called Silver by Walter Dillon.
Yeah, I've heard.
Young children can, in age just, it's about how the moon makes everything on the earth look silver. It's absolutely phenomenal. I think it's so lyrical and absolutely amazing to read.
What about Wordsworth?
Absolutely.
Daffodils, I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud. Something that you can always start with. And
absolutely.
That is a poem that elevates nature. And then, it's all about flowers, and it instantly brings you happiness.
It's about how a good experience remains with you even when the experience is past.
Yeah, it's not forgotten. It's there. The last stanza especially. It's beautiful in the poem.
Absolutely.
So
I think poems really make it. They make reading a whole lot, another level of joy, I would say.
But like you said, it is acquired. It's like a quiet taste. It takes time. Not everybody knows how to appreciate poetry. So that's something that probably we need to teach.
Maya Angelou's
I Rise. Oh, yes.
It's so uplifting and empowering, I think.
We did that recently in class with my grade 11s. And they were amazing.
Yeah, and anybody can read it. Anybody. And any of Dr. Seuss poems.
Yeah.
All the places you'll go. It's all about, if you have your feet with you, you can go anywhere. And it's so inspiring. I think that's where the true sense of reading and the true sense of literature
Yes.
can be introduced to
That
children.
connect with literature, that emotional connect, that love for books and reading.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on, especially as a language teacher who day in and day out think about how children should develop their language abilities. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. It has been an absolute delight meeting you again and, having this conversation on reading with you.
Thank you to the team. Thank you to you. It's wonderful catching up here like this.
Yeah, absolutely.